Superpowers would be so cool to have. Imagine being able to fly, or teleport, or read minds, or turn into metal. It would be great. But some comic book characters get the absolute worst powers. I'm Adam Andrews with Top 10 Nerd. Let me know what superpowers you've always wanted, and this is the top 10 superpowers you wouldn't want to have. Coming in at number 10 is exploding with very serious limits. Bailey Hoskins. It's a name known by way too few people, but it should be known by more. Bailey found out that both his parents were mutants, which pretty much guaranteed that he also possessed the X gene and a mutant power. Bailey, alongside his parents, paid a visit to the Xavier Institute to find out what exactly his power was. After some tests done by Hank McCoy, Beast, Bailey was informed that his mutant ability was the power to make himself explode. An incredibly useful combat ability that came with one massive caveat. Bailey could only explode one time. He had no ability to regenerate after the explosion. I mean, when we think about it, being able to regenerate after you literally explode in a ball of fire makes no sense whatsoever. But kudos to this comic for having a realistic portrayal of what having the power to explode would actually likely be like. But what's worse is that now, as a mutant, Bailey is accepted by his fellow mutants with literally no way to contribute other than doing things that literally anyone else could do. If you had the power to explode one time, what good would that ever do for you as an individual? Literally none. And at number 9 is Pyrokinesis with no immunity to fire. When I was a kid, I always thought that the superheroes who could control fire were the coolest ones. Johnny Storm was the prime example. He's arguably the coolest member of the Fantastic Four, not temperature-wise, obviously. But at that younger age, I never actually questioned whether or not the characters were impervious to flame. I just assumed that that comes with the power. Well, I was wrong. Mutants like Pyro can control flame, but are hurt by any flame they aren't actually controlling. But his Ultimate Universe counterpart, this was not the case, and he was actually covered in tons of scar tissue from the use of his own powers. Any flame he controlled also burnt him. I also believe there is an unnamed mutant from the Xavier Institute who could set herself on fire but was completely susceptible to the burns she would receive. Although for the life of me I couldn't actually find the comic book she was a part of, so if any of you know who I'm talking about, I think she showed up for like one panel, let me know down in the comments below. Either way, that would be an absolutely horrible power to have. And at number 8 is a Quasi-Sonic Scream. Black Bolt of the Inhumans is 1, surprisingly useless, but 2, has one of the most destructive abilities of all his people. A single itty bitty whisper from this guy could level an entire city, or cause dormant volcanoes to become active again, or shake entire continents apart while creating tremors on the other side of the planet. A full-on hypersonic shout that has been able to completely destroy entire celestial bodies. I'm talking about planets and moons and all that kind of stuff. This means that Blackagar Baltagon had to go through rigorous training and a huge level of self-control to make sure that he never unintentionally destroys everything he loves and cherishes. But I got a couple questions here. What if he sneezes? What if he coughs? What if he gets hit and accidentally lets out like an involuntary sound? What if there was one of those contests run by a radio station where you knew the answer and you had to call in to claim it? Look, people live their lives not being able to talk, but to make no sound whatsoever? Do you know how hard that would be? I would not want this power. I'm out. And at number 7 is Hindsight. To be completely candid here, Hindsight Lad's powers are not actual powers, but he acts like they are, and that means I'm going to talk about how much the real superheroes all hate him. Carlton Lafroige was a nuisance before he even became Hindsight Lad, but when he found out that his neighbor, Robbie Baldwin, was Speedball of the New Warriors, he threatened to reveal Robbie's secret identity unless Robbie let him be a part of the team. He actually managed to prove very useful and did have some tactical ability, which eventually got him fully put on the team. He kind of became their guy in the chair, but that's because his self-given power was the power of hindsight. The power to look back at all the superhero fights that he's been a part of and analyze them, and now, with the present hindsight, he can tell the heroes what they should have tried differently, which in his mind meant that they can now prepare if that exact same scenario plays out again in exactly the same way. Which, newsflash, in superpower-based combat, it's not likely to happen very often. The moral of the story of Hindsight Lad is that you don't want to be this guy. you are not going to have many friends, and if you do, they will still find that aspect of you extremely annoying. Number 6. Compass powers. Hindsight's powers are hilarious, but everything about this is hilarious. So, during the events of Spider Island, the Jackal had used bed bugs to basically infect a large majority of Manhattan with a virus that gives them Spider-Man-like abilities and even turns some of them into giant mutated spider people. Now that part is obviously not very hilarious, but thanks to some smart thinking, the heroes eventually learned that those with powers already, like mutants and Inhumans, were immune to the spider virus. So now, the question is, how do we give regular people powers to cure them of the virus without creating a whole city of extremely powerful people, some of whom would become supervillains if they wanted to? Reed Richards had the cunning plan to give everyone powers, but just not very good ones. So, what powers did he give the entire population of Manhattan? Compass powers, aka the ability to be able to detect which way is north. Could this be useful? Absolutely. Are there tons of ways to figure out north without needing a power? Also, absolutely. Also, for people in Manhattan, the city is built on a grid with numbered streets, so everyone already knows which way north is. It's just lame. Number 5. Reverse aging. Invincible has some great characters with some actually unique powers. For Monster Girl, or Amanda, she had been placed under a curse that allows her to transform into a masculine-looking troll-like monster at will. With super strength, able to lift 60 tons, accelerated healing, and superhuman dense tissue that makes her very hard to hurt. But it's called the curse for a reason. When Amanda reverts back to human form, her cells rebuild incorrectly, which is bad, in case you didn't know. Because of this, Amanda gets younger and younger looking each time she uses her monster form. But her monster form would grow larger as she got younger, so like, you know, you win some and you lose some. When she made her comic book debut, Amanda was 29, but she had the appearance of a 12-year-old girl. Now, Robot gave her a belt that would store part of her original cells when she transforms and keep them until she reverts back, helping her to stay looking her actual age eventually. But without this magical science fiction belt, I mean the whole thing's science fiction, but Amanda would have eventually just kept de-aging until I'm assuming she wouldn't be able to survive anymore, or she would just stop using her powers. Either way, a loss and not really worth it. And number 4 is Detachable Arms. If you have ever needed someone to lend you a hand, well, Arm Fall Off Boy would have been the ideal guy to have at arm's length. Sorry, 2 puns in one. His name kind of describes exactly what his power is. Floyd Belkin, who eventually went by the less hilarious name of Splitter, had the curious ability to take off his own arms, which he could use primarily as a club to beat up criminals with. So basically, Arm Fall Off Boy's power was to gain extended reach, but with the cost of literally only having one usable arm, which is now preoccupied holding the arm that he just took off. Do you see why this power is not exactly a great advantage? At least he isn't alone. His whole family, known lovingly as the Fall Off family, can all detach different parts of their bodies. In this current family tree, we got head fall off mom, legs fall apart in segments dad, fingers fall off gal, who is his sister, butt fall off G-Ma Deb Deb, who is the grandmother, and then just freaking granddad Glenn. I'm so glad that this is not a joke. They all appeared in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen Volume 2 number 9 in 2020. Check it out, please. And at number 3 is the power to produce tar. Being a Morlock is a prime example why mutants get the bad end of the stick sometimes. If your mutation makes you physically undesirable or makes living in regular human society an issue, then you get slapped with the name Morlock, which is horrible, and you go and live with the other Morlocks because they are the only ones who will accept you. At least that's how it used to be. Not to mention there was the whole mutant massacre thing. Horrible. Most people wouldn't choose this life willingly. Tar Baby certainly did not. First of all, that is an incredibly questionable name to give yourself, but it does check out. This Morlock has the ability to secrete a black tar-like substance through the pores of his skin that is incredibly sticky and causes things to permanently stick to him on contact. Just imagining this makes me annoyed. Especially if you had like little control over the ability, things would be sticking to you left, right, and center. How could someone go through life like that. The amount of things I would get unintentionally stuck to or have stuck to me, this would just be the most annoying power to have. No. And at number 2 is being infectious. I think Infectious Lass is actually kind of an interesting idea for an alien. Her real name is Drura Sept, and she comes from the planet Somator, however you pronounce that. All the inhabitants of this planet have bodies that are homes for colonies of thousands of microorganisms that carry thousands and thousands of infectious diseases, which gives them an immunity to disease, and that part is absolutely a power that everyone should want. The only problem is that they have to interact with other species who don't have this ability, meaning while they can to a degree control who gets infected, it's not exactly flawless, and the risk of infecting others is pretty high, even accidentally. Now imagine you were on Earth, which you are, and we're the only person with this ability. How the hell are you supposed to interact with anyone or anything? You'd have to wear a hazmat suit all the time. The power would make people absolutely fear you, which sure could be a blessing if you hate people, but like even your loved ones? You want a pet? Too bad, buddy. Kids? Don't even think about it. It would be rough. And finally, in at number 1 is acidic vomit. The reason for why you wouldn't want this superpower is given to us in the very introduction of the character who possesses it. In X-Force number 116 from 2001, we are introduced to the character of Axel Clunny. Axel developed the power of acidic vomit midway through a little intoxicated romantic rendezvous with a girl on the beach. They were making out, and that's when Axel suddenly had to hurl, and when he did, he managed to dissolve a large part of this poor girl's face. If that wasn't bad enough, Axel couldn't even remember the girl's name. Now look, the applications of this power could potentially be many, but this acidic vomit would need to be accompanied by a control over vomiting and a control over when the vomit is actually acidic, the latter being something Axel does not possess. Now I don't know about you guys, but I have never found a particularly opportune time to spew chunks. Now imagine every time you had to, it also came with the risk of not only completely dissolving whatever you were using to catch it, but also dissolving anything else it came into contact with, like the floor, or your clothes, or I don't know, the girl on the beach you're making out with. I'm sorry for all the images I have given you to think about here, but I didn't create this power, so it's not my fault. It's gross. It's bad. Look, I wouldn't want a single one of these powers, but if you would, let me know down below. I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd, and I'll catch you guys on the flippy flop. Peace out, nerds!